Okay, I think it's working. Let me know. Let me know. How are you guys doing today? I think we're live. Hello. All right, let's see. Let's check the phone. Looks like I'm not live, but I am live. I think there's just a delay. We'll find out. Okay, well, hello. Hello. Welcome to my first live from the RV. And I'm seeing this. So many imperfections in my RV. But welcome. Today we are going to talk about, we're reacting. I don't know if you guys are aware of Asia Arrow, but we are reacting to her video because I found it fascinating. And what I found fascinating is because she always speaks the truth. That's what I love about Asia. Asia, I had the honor of meeting with Asia in Merida twice, maybe 3 times, I forget. But she is literally just as calm and cool and just chill as she is in her videos. So she is one of the YouTubers and one of the content creators, I guess, that are just very authentic to who she is, which is not everyone. But that's what I love about Asia. And if you haven't watched her video, you absolutely should. Okay, hold on. I wrote notes because I always get nervous when I do these lives. All right, so we're talking about why expats leave Mexico / why YouTube expats leave Mexico, but really focusing, I think, on just expats in general. And before we begin, though, I do want to know if you have ever been to another country. Are you an expat? Where have you been? All the things, just so we know if I'm talking to people who maybe want to become an expat, but who have not done it, or people who have done it. So you have actual experiences on the topic and you can tell me how right or wrong I am, because obviously everything I say will be a generalization, it'll be an assumption, it'll be etc. So it won't be necessarily perfect to you, which is why I wanted to do a live. That way you can interrupt and be like, no, this is my experience versus my experience. So that's kind of the plan. But real quick, if you are new to my channel, because my channel has kind of taken a turn, I thought I would explain who I am. So my name is Anne. I have been a traveler my whole life. Morning. Oh, we got Karen here. So I've been a traveler my whole life, primarily because my dad was in the military. My dad was a Marine when I was born, and he retired when I was 11. So the first 11 years of my life, I moved for that reason. Then my dad continued to move because after the military, he found a job that still transferred him around the US. So I've just always had kind of a traveling lifestyle. My mother is Japanese, and that's where my parents met, was in Japan. So of course, if you're in the military and you have a spouse that's from Japan, you're going to spend at least one tour in Japan. So a lot of my early childhood, like from 2 to 6 early childhood, was physically in Japan, but the rest of my childhood was in the US. And then when I became an adult and I was in college, I realized that it's actually a little bit rare for like a regular job to transfer you over the world. Like, it's just not something people do. So then I joined the military because that was and still is, one of my things that I enjoy about life is moving. I use the word traveler a lot, which I think is, it's accurate, but it's also inaccurate. What I like to do is I like to move. I like to pick up my things, move to another country, stay there for months, if not years. I said country, but I also mean just anywhere. It could be within the US. Yeah, so I've always just moved. I've always moved. And I find it fascinating a little bit to meet people who have not done those same things. I'm used to it now. I'm 45, so I'm now used to it. But it used to surprise me that people don't do the same thing. And because it's not as common for people to just up and move all the time, I think when they are following expats or they have a friend who's an expat, they find those actions really weird. Some of the things that expats do really weird. And one of the things we do is we leave. We don't stay in the same place. All right. Before we get to there. So Asia Arrow, again, super chill, super amazing. She talked about why she has left Merida. I guess we'll back up. If you don't know who Asia Arrow is, she is also an American. I'm not sure about her life before Merida, but while I was in Merida, she moved to Merida. She was already a YouTuber. She was already doing videos and enjoyed her time in Merida, as most people do. Most people that move to Merida, Mexico, love it there, at least in the beginning. It is often people's first experience with Mexico. It's often people's first experience overseas even. And so most people really do have a good time. They either have a great time or a horrible time. But a lot of people, especially in Merida, they enjoy Merida initially. But as they get their expat wings, as they figure out what it is that they enjoy about themselves, because guys, if you've lived in the same place your entire life, or most of your entire life, let's say, I love Asia. If you've lived in the same place, then what ends up happening is you get in a rut, right? You get great routines, you get whatever, but you get in a rut and you don't realize you're in a rut sometimes because you might enjoy the rut that you are in. You might enjoy the habits. The benefit of travel and the benefit of going to, especially an entirely new country, is you get out of your rut, because literally you can't maintain all of it. You might be able to maintain some of it, but not all of it. And when you are forced to kind of create the new routine that you enjoy, that you like in the new location, at first there's the fun freedom fact, the freedom of, I don't have to do the thing that I've always done. There's also a little bit of fear, like I can't do the thing I've always done. And in the middle of that, in between that, you start to realize, what is it that I like truly? Like if I have an actual blank slate, I don't have friends and family. Sorry, I don't have friends and family in, for example, Mexico. I don't have anyone telling me what to do here. What can I do here? And so you start to create the life of your dreams, hopefully. Or at least you start to realize what the life of your dreams kind of look like. And wherever you're at, like, so the life of your dreams is never cookie cutter. It is never, I'm going to move to Paris and that will be the life of my dreams. It's never, I'm going to move to Italy, that will be the life of my dreams. It's always you being self-aware of your priorities, of the things that matter to you, of the things you enjoy, and then adding that to your life, right? Because there's no location. There's no zip code where everyone is happy because it's such a perfect place. No, we have to create that. And in creating it, you might realize that where you're at might not be the perfect ideal. Might not be the perfect. And I would say the one negative of Merida that everyone talks about is it's hot there. Very, very hot. And so if going on long walks is one of the things that you realize, this is what I like to do, it's what I enjoy doing, but I just can't in this heat, you might move to San Chris. You might move somewhere else because it's too hot. Okay, I feel like I'm slightly going off target because I love this subject so much. So I want to... But before you get to Merida, before you get to wherever you go to, you have the big move, right? You have the selling of your house, the figuring out, so selling it, renting it, or leaving it if you have a rental situation. What are you going to do with your things? Are you going to take it with you? Are you going to put it in storage? Are you going to sell it? What are you going to do with your pets? Are you going to let somebody watch your pet because you don't know for sure if you're leaving for that long? Or are you going to actually bring your pet with you? Go through all of that? Are you going to bring your family? Are you going to convince some of your friends to come with you? What are you going to do with that side? How are you going to make money? What kind of insurance? Like, moving, if you've never done it before, or if you've not done it in a long time, is a lot. Especially, again, if you've got possessions in your current location, right? It's a huge deal. And so I understand why some of the people that followed me when I was in Mexico followed me to learn about the city that I was in and to learn tips and tricks of how to just kind of have a normal life there. Once you do it, right? Once you move once, again, so let's say you go to Merida. Once you move to Merida, you've already figured out what you're doing with your things. You're already figured out what you're doing with, the job or the income or the whatnot. You've already experienced it once. And so at this point, you're not fine tuning it. And as strange as it sounds, to move from your first move, let's say to Merida, Mexico, to, Thailand, to Italy, to another part of Mexico, or to return to the US, the second move that you do will not be as big of a deal as the first move, because the first move is the figuring out what to do with your things, right? So when people leave Mexico, it's hardly ever, I'm going to say hardly ever because everyone's a little bit different, but it's very rarely because Mexico was a problem, right? It's usually because the individual had a list of needs or wants that needed to be met, And that location didn't seem to be doing it. So maybe they went back home to family. Maybe they went back home because of family, because of health reasons, because of finances. Often a question I get, these are from people who would never move to Mexico, nevertheless, why are Americans trying to move to Mexico while Mexicans are trying to move to the US? Why are we trying to enter a place where the locals are trying to escape? Well, one, obviously not all the locals are trying to escape, but two, it's because of income. It's because in the US, you can get a job that pays much, much, much more than a job you can get in Mexico. And even once we enter like the online world, the remote job world, so much easier to network with people in their country, so much easier to get a job in the country. Because again, as you're getting the job, as you're networking, as you're doing all of that, having the ability to meet in person, having the ability to chat, like, becomes really key. And so if you can't get a job, oh, Karen says it's a lot like dating. It is. You have to figure out your preferences. And there is so much similarities to all of this. So when expats leave Mexico, it is not a Mexico problem. It is not that there was an issue. It's usually they saw something in themselves that they wanted to fine tune. Good morning, Jared. That they wanted to fine tune. And so they went to the next place. Could be another place in Mexico, could be another place in the US or wherever they're from, could be a third country. Once an expat realizes how easy it is, and I say easy, I'm oversimplifying it, I know, but compared to the fear, compared to the idea of moving to a new country, the actuality is much easier. It's much easier. Once you realize that, once that experience is done, then an expat will probably continue moving until they find the place, right, where they feel like they've got all the things that they might want. Okay, I keep saying I'm doing two. I've got like comments coming here, but I can't see them long enough to respond fully. So, Mom and Karen, thank you for being here. Love it. Yeah, I love Asia. She's awesome. San Chris has the best weather. What I will say, so I like cold weather. I don't think I like Canada cold weather. I've never been to Canada, but I'm imagining I don't like Canada cold weather. I would like San Chris to actually be a little bit colder. Just a little bit colder. Like San Chris in the winter for me was kind of perfect. San Chris year round during the day got hot. Not Merida hot, but just like hot enough to where I would not need to find the shade, but want to find the shade. But I'm usually a sleeveless kind of, I like it to be cold. And I feel like I'm never or rarely in a place that's cold long enough. But that's okay, because I also like travel. And Jared is here. Hey, and we've got, I think, 13 people here. Well, my phone says 13. This guy says 9. I have no idea how many people who are here, but thank you for being here. Okay. So yeah, I've been getting, I guess we'll call it a lot of people suggesting a little, I won't say a lot. I've gotten a handful of comments really suggesting that I'm leaving Mexico either because I can't hack it or because Mexico is not a great place to live. Like I've been getting kind of those two reasons, and it's like military, but more importantly, look at all the other expats in Mexico that are not military, that just moved to Mexico because they heard it was a great place, and they're loving it. So definitely when you see someone leaving Mexico, it's not because, well, it's usually not because they can't hack it. That being said, why did I leave Merida? One, travelers got to travel. I like to live in a place a few months, like I say a few, like 6 to 10 months kind of concept, to maybe 3 years max. Like I would say 3 years is the max that I ever want to live anywhere, generally speaking. And so partially I was in Merida. I was in Merida for a year and a half, and that was long enough. I feel like I understood Merida, not perfectly, but I understood it enough, and it was hot, and I was ready for cooler weather. So then San Cris. San Cris is fascinating. I could have honestly stayed in San Cris much longer. It's fascinating for so many reasons, but I'm also a single mom. So that means I don't travel alone. It's not just me, going where I want to go. It's always a family scenario for me. So Alex needs to be okay also. When Alex was younger, he's had a military lifestyle. He was born in one place, but lived before RV life. He had lived in 4 states in his life. Once without me, because I was on a ship constantly deploying, and what am I going to do, right? So he would stay with my sister. So he's lived in 4 places before I retired. So he was very used to kind of moving around. My last duty station, so second to the last duty station, the third place he's lived, which is where he lived with my sister. He was happy. He had cousins to play with. They have a dog, etc. He was living a good life. Good enough life is what I found out. But when I picked him back up and we moved to Florida for our last duty station, that was when I realized that Alex was doing what all kids do. And that was just dealing with the life that they have, right? They're just surviving. So he's a good-hearted kid. He's naturally a happy kid. So he's going to have a good time pretty much anywhere. But in discussions, as we're talking, I realized the importance of having his own bed to him, of having his own possessions. He felt, and my sister's awesome, there was no drama per se, but he slept in the guest bedroom, right? He slept in the guest bedroom, which was also a quasi storage area, as most people have, right? If you've got a spare bedroom in your house, you put a bed in there, but you also put stuff that you don't deal with or want to deal with all the time. And so what I didn't realize during that moment is how important having his own space, his own identified items are to him. But he has a traveling mother. He has a mother that even upon retirement, she wants to keep traveling. So we did the RV life, which was good, but Alex's number one complaint was friends. My number one complaint, and I loved RV life, was cost. It was expensive. I would say not as expensive as living in a house, which is what I had done before RV life, but it was much more expensive than I expected it to be. So then we moved to Mexico, theoretically for braces, we moved to Mexico for braces. I say theoretically because we removed them. That's a whole different video that I don't even know how to fully explain, but I will only say it's nothing wrong with the braces in Mexico. It is that braces and travel life don't mix well together. It is also that Alex's teeth are they're wonky. And I feel like there's an element of his needing more time, like longer time to handle things. And then there's kids who don't like to brush their teeth when there's metal on them. So I'm like, we need a break. We're going to take them off. And I didn't know a dentist in San Cris was the other reason. There are orthodontists in San Cris. I now know this, but I couldn't find one online. So I thought it'd be easier to just remove it. And we haven't put it back on yet, but we might soon. We'll find out. Anyway, so Alex's issue always in travel life, whether it's the RV, whether it's Mexico, is having friends, people he can talk to, and not just one good friend, even though he really only needs one good friend, but we like to have a variety of friends. So he is not as introverted as his mother. I do good with no friends, and I do good with one friend. I start not being overly comfortable if I feel like there's too many people competing for my attention. So Alex wanted a more normal lifestyle. He also wanted to experience school, American school, because obviously in Mexico, which he also went to school, everything's in Spanish. And so he felt like he never truly grasped anything, right? Didn't quite connect with all of his Spanish speaking friends and never completely understood the subject that they were talking about. So he was just in this muddy world, and he did not enjoy that. Ironically, I've lived that life as well. going back to Japan when I didn't speak Japanese fluently, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of fun to guess what was happening around me without fully understanding, but most people are not crazy like me, so Alex did not enjoy that. He wanted to come back to at least an English-speaking location. We came back to the US so he can have a more normal experience. He's not in actual school, like he's not in a traditional school. He's just taking classes. But okay, I see all these chats. Yeah, Karen says San Cruz is hot right now. It's April. It should not be hot yet, in my opinion. But it gets hot there. Doug. Hey, Doug. All right. Skimming through her video, sounds like Asia was locked down in Merida. We were all locked down in Merida. We really were. And she was isolated, if I'm guessing. Expat activities were much less during lockdown. So not sure I'd like that. I'm trying to remember when Asia, I think Asia might have moved to Merida during lockdown. Lockdown was different for a single adult than it was a single young adult, than it was for a child or for an older person. Because I got to Merida in 2019, the end of 2019, so before lockdown. They did not want Alex walking the dog. When neighbors would see Alex walking the dog, they would be like, hey, and they would yell at him. And it took me a minute to realize they weren't yelling, angry yelling, but they were yelling like a concerned yelling. And what they were ultimately saying is, you need to be in the house. Your little body should not be outside. So they did not want kids outside ever. Ubers and such, only one customer per Uber. So you could have the driver and one customer and no children. Exception to the rule was medical. If you were going to the doctor's or an emergency dentist visit. So I basically claimed that all of our braces visits were emergencies. Not entirely true, right? But yeah, so for a single person, lockdown wasn't quite as bad. But I also think when she got there, she was in honeymoon phase. She was just enjoying, the cost of living and the language. And Merida is a really welcoming, beautiful place. Like, the people in Merida are awesome. I love the food. I love Yucatecan food. I'm hearing that Asia didn't necessarily. Well, Asia's also, I believe she's vegan or vegetarian. And Yucatecan food is very meat heavy for sure. So anyway, she had lots of little issues that it took her a while. I say a while. It took her months to kind of self-assess and go, yeah, this is definitely not the place for me. She went to Mexico City for a certain period of time. And I think there must have been something there that wasn't quite perfect. Right? She came back to Merida, but I think, again, being able to compare countries or cities within a country, or really states, because they're very different locations, lets you assess. Of these two that I now have personal experience in, which one do I prefer? Okay, I might prefer Mexico City over Merida. In her case, for me, San Cruz over Merida any day. Again, the people in Merida are amazing. It's way too hot for me. If we could take the temperature down. I love being able to see mountains. I'm not a fan of looking out into the distance and seeing no mountains. It's part of why I don't want to live on an island, because I've done island living before. And in one direction, you look on the ocean and you just see ocean. And ocean is beautiful. I love the ocean. But I want to see mountains. I want to see things and not just buildings. So Merida has a huge lack of mountains because it's jungle kind of area. So I don't know if it's necessarily the lockdown for her, because her experience with the lockdown should have been different than mine, because I have a kid who can't go anywhere. I was therefore also kind of stuck at home because I didn't want to leave Alex every single day, hours and hours, while I go and meet up with friends. But many single people / parents, like if it's a dual parent family, one parent would leave to have a girls' day, the guy would leave to have a guy's day, kind of thing, even if they've got kids at home. So it's lockdown for a single person is different than lockdown for a family in Merida, at least in my experience. Okay. And lockdown is never fun. That, I will say, that's the other thing for San Cruz. San Cruz opened up faster. San Cruz removed masks faster. San Cruz, so it was a lovely change of pace from Merida to San Cruz on multiple levels. not just the heat. Okay, Jared, wow, I didn't know you were leaving Mexico. Are you going back? So I am back in the US. Actually, this is my RV, a portion of my RV. I could maybe, I don't want to really mess with my tripod, but I'm in my RV. I'm in the US. I'm in Georgia, and I moved here March. So last month is when I moved back here. Francie, hey Francie. My wife struggles with, guess what's going on around me in Mexico? I'm fine with it. I don't know why. I think part of it is because, so English is my second language. My mother was Japanese, so my first language was Japanese. So obviously the first 2 years of my life, I'm mostly with my mom and dad. I mostly don't speak. But my mom is speaking to me in Japanese. We moved to Japan. So we lived in Japan for 4 years. I became fluent in Japanese, right? In English, I knew things like, hey, Dad, I love you, Dad. Good morning, Dad. Breakfast time, Dad. Like, I just knew little things that I might say to my dad, but my dad was working all the time. So it's not like I had as much conversation with my dad at this point than I did with my mom. So English was not a strong point for me. But when we moved back to the US, we moved to Hawaii, to a military base, Mokapu Elementary. And they had ESL classes, so English as second language classes. And the group that I got put in and my teacher were all Japanese speakers. They were all Japanese speakers learning English. Well, the teacher obviously already knew English, but the students were. So learning English for me was really easy. And so I don't have a negative association with not knowing the things around me. I will say I was in Japan for kindergarten and first grade, and I didn't speak English at that point. In Japan, in a military school, they did not have ESL classes. I do not know why, but it didn't bother me. And I think it's because it's kindergarten and first grade, and it just didn't bother me. I remember going home and saying, Mom, I think they're counting by twos. I'm saying this in Japanese, right? And my mom will be like, oh, here's how you do that in English. 2, 4, 6, 8. And so I would go to my class the next day, and if they called on me, I knew enough English to go, are we skipping by twos? Are we skipping by threes or by fives? And then I could recite it based on what my mom taught me. But the school, it was just a huge guesswork. But the only class that I remember, aside from playing outside, right, recess, is math, because math I could much easier visually see what they were talking about and go home and go, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that, right? And again, it's kindergarten and first grade, so we're not talking about heavy math. But I did not know English, and I did not mind it. It didn't bother me. I didn't feel anything negative because I didn't necessarily have anything complicated I wanted to say. Alex, he was 10 when we moved to Merida. He's already speaking English fluently. He wants to talk about Minecraft. He wants to talk about Pokemon. He wants to talk about history and what if. He used to do a lot of like, what if instead of this happening in history, this happened? Where would we be today? You can't have that kind of deep discussion in a foreign language quickly. Like you need probably years, honestly, of studying a language to have that level of speaking. So I think that's kind of the difference, is I was so young when I was exposed to my second language that it didn't bother me that I didn't fully understand. And even today, when I don't understand the things around me, I just look for clues. I see or I hear intonation more than the words they're saying. And it just doesn't bother me. But it bothers, I think, it definitely bothers my son. And I think it bothers a lot of people who have never had to do that, especially again in their youth. It bothered my sister, she was a Japanese speaker for such a short time. So English is basically her first language. She had trouble going back to Japan. She was 10. My sister was 10 when we went back to Japan for the summer. We would always go to school in the summer in Japan, and she could not handle the school. It was too much Japanese at once, and she hated it. So yeah, not everyone's not the same. Francie says, I love your RV thing. I love it too. It's so tiny. And I kind of love it because it's tiny and because I know Alex is not the type to want to live with me forever. I think as Alex gets bigger, I would need a larger RV. But I think as Alex gets bigger, he's going to RV with me less. In which case, I'm glad I have a small RV and I don't have to, lug around a large thing. So I love it. Glow. Hey. Oh, I love you guys are talking. Yeah. Expats leaving Mexico. Expats moving within Mexico to other countries. It really is not a reflection ever of the country that they're from or that they're going to, or that they left. Because you learn yourself through travel. I compare travel a lot to rehab, which I've never actually been to, but theoretically, right? Somebody who wants to quit drugs, they get taken out of their everyday life, right? Where their friends, their family, their environment encourages them to do these drugs, whether on purpose or not. They go to a rehab center where there aren't any drugs. There's usually like not even any caffeine. So there's literally nothing to get addicted to, basically. But what they have is clean air, calm people, a new environment. They have quiet. They have time to think about what matters to them. And so in rehab, you usually improve, you get better. When you go back home, going back to that original environment, sometimes things change. You go back to your old ways. And so I think that's how travel is. You go to, for example, Mexico. You don't understand everything that's going on around you. You can't get some really specific things that you might want or get used to. And so you settle. You're like, okay, well, I can't get this. I'll get this, which will serve the same purpose. And then you start to realize, what is it about where you just came from that you did love? Because maybe you left with a negative, like, oh, I hate the US. I'm leaving this crazy place and I'm going to Mexico. Maybe that was how you left. We don't know. But whatever new things you're finding, in this case in Mexico, it's just new. It's just a new way of doing things, a new way of seeing the world. And that newness, you will naturally contrast to the old way and you'll start to make comparisons. What are the pros and cons? At first, you might only notice the pro. There's a honeymoon phase that happens when you travel. So at first, you might only notice the pro. Over time, though, you'll notice you. Not just the pros and cons of the item, because the pros and cons of the item it's just an item, right? The real thing that matters is you. The real thing is, what do you like? How do you like your coffee to be? And can that be found in Mexico? How do you like to shop for things? How do you like to, and as you discover you feel better, you feel good because you are essentially creating the life that you want while you're discovering yourself. And so sometimes the idea of going back to the US is terrifying. And it's not terrifying. You might think it's because it's the US, but a lot of times it's terrifying because you're in rehab right now. You're in a calm, peaceful, beautiful place, and going back home might mean your old habits will come back. And trust me, some of them will. And so there's a loathing and a fear to go back to the environment that really enabled your original life. And it takes, for me, it's taken multiple iterations of going back home for me to realize, like, I'm the problem. Oh, it's me. Was it Taylor Swift song? Hi, I'm the problem. Because when I would come home, because again, I joined the military when I was 21. So I left home and I would come home for visits. And a lot of times I would lose the good habits I've given myself when I came back home. And so there was this loathing of, I don't want to go back home because horrible things always happen. And it took years of coming back home to realize it's because I make them happen. It's because I think to myself, this is the type of conversation, this is the type of habit, this is the type of food that they appreciate. Therefore, I'm going to go back into this past world, not realizing that my friends and family have also matured while I was gone. They didn't leave locations, but they also mature because people mature. And that I'm able, as I'm older, to have those conversations and be like, oh, I don't do that anymore because of this and this. You do you. I don't do it anymore. And a lot of times when I started to listen to my family more, turns out they don't do it either, or they don't do it as much, whatever the negative things are. Again, I have a big family, so not everyone's changed at the same rate. But yeah, there's a fear of going back home always. always it happens. And it becomes a meme where I think American expats will make fun of the US, which, listen, it's fair. The US has a lot of crazy going on. Totally fair. But some of that, the making fun, some of the loathing of going back to the US is a self-inflicted scenario where we do it to ourselves. And therefore, the thing we might do instead of going back home is travel to another country, travel to another city, go somewhere else. There's an element of escapism that could happen with travel that's not entirely false. It's weird for me to hear because honestly, I do think having traveled my whole life, like I have memories in elementary, but definitely in junior high and high school where I thought to myself, this person in front of me who I don't like is irrelevant because literally, and I didn't know when, but I'm going to move. Either my dad's going to move, or as I became an adult, I was going to move. But this idea of I can just leave. Whatever this drama that's happening in front of me that I don't like, there was an element of I just have to suffer through it for a short period and then I'm gone. When I joined the military, same thing. Beauty of the military is new people are coming in, old people are leaving. And if you don't like the old people, you're glad they're leaving. And sometimes new people coming in changes the dynamic of the workplace, making things generally better. Not always, but generally. So yeah. Okay, let's catch up. Oh wow, so many things. Okay. Doug says he speaks a bit of Spanish. Very helpful. I took French in high school. It's because I watched a lot of French movies and I read a lot of books with French in it. So I thought, well, French makes the most sense. Now, looking back, right? Spanish would have been the way to go. Doug agrees regarding mountains. Pretty sure our next trip will be to Zalapa. Oh my gosh, guys. Orizaba area in the mountains of Veracruz. Veracruz is supposed to be so beautiful. I don't know I know people that have driven through there and they tell me it's beautiful. And I've seen short videos of people traveling through Veracruz. I don't see people like living there who can tell me all about it. So Doug, when you get there, I feel like you should start a YouTube channel or just message me and tell me how it is there. Because I hear Veracruz is gorgeous. My mom was so cool. She's pretty awesome. And Glow loves where she's living now. Mountains and beaches. Morning weather is nice and crisp. Nice and crisp is the best part. Crisp. As well as the evening. Jared says, wow, I'm really out of the loop. I just looked at your channel and I've missed so much. I'm going to have to binge watch it. Feel free to binge watch, Jared. Definitely feel free. But you haven't missed too much. I've only been in the US. Like I said, about a month. A little over a month, maybe. And Doug says, Anthony Bourdain said, travel is about the gorgeous feeling of teetering in the unknown. Some people are cut out for it, some aren't. Not a criticism or a shortcoming, just reality. Facts. Because again, so yeah, you're teetering, you're learning about yourself, you're learning about the things around you. I love it. But some people want a stronger, we'll call it a foundation than that. For sure. And Alex, I think, even though he's my son, Alex is so different from me sometimes that it shocks me. His speech is very different from mine. He's much more literal than I am. He's much more exact in his speech. Yeah. So I think it makes perfect sense that Alex is not the traveler that I am. He enjoys having stability, which is totally fine. It's actually kind of cool. To a certain degree, I like my friends to stay in the same spot so I know exactly where to go to find them. If I decide to go back somewhere, I'm like, okay, she'll be there. And I can plan even months in advance because they'll be there. But when you have other friends who are also travelers, it's like 2 months from now, I don't know where you'll be because most people travel faster than I do. Whereas I like to be there for months and months and months. So I'm usually much more stable. All right, and Jared says, so true. I just got back from 3 weeks in Mexico and I'm already falling back into bad habits. Yes. And it's us, again. So especially in my 20s, I really thought it's because of them. It's because of those people. They're always doing what they're doing, and it's causing. No, I own me. I can choose. Again, I'm sure there are some environments where your environment is overpowering, but that is not my case. In my case, my family is pretty chill. They do have habits, they do have routines that they enjoy, but there is no like forcing me to go with those routines very often. So, but I'm the odd duck, I will say, even though we've all, not all, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And I would say the oldest 3 of us have traveled the most, whereas the younger 2 had a much more stable life because my dad ultimately landed in Georgia. He landed in Georgia when I was 17. So, but even though the 3 of us, the 3 older kids, we traveled our entire childhood, I'm the only crazy one that still continues moving. I'm the only one that, like, if the idea of owning a house, and I've had houses before, the idea of owning a house to me is a real estate investment. I do want it to be comfortable for me to live in as well as a backup concept. But really, when I think of buying property, I think of things like, who am I going to rent it to? You know, will they at least pay for the house, right? Because I'll probably get a mortgage. Those are my thoughts. Their thoughts are whether they'll enjoy living in it for the next 30 years. And I'm like, 30 years? There's nowhere I'm going to live for 30 years. I can't imagine it at this point. So I don't look in the future location based like that. If I think 30 years from now, I hope I'm in good health, which of course requires action today. So I need to get better habits, but I hope I'm in good health. I hope if I don't have this RV, because 30 more years is probably a long time for this RV, I hope I have another RV. I imagine it'll be small, but honestly, maybe I'll, one day realize that a large RV is the way to go. I'm okay with that. But I hope I still have a vehicle that can move, that I can live in, comfortably. When I look at van lifers or people that live in their cars, my one thought is, I just really want to stand. Standing is so important to me. But aside from that, I want a lifestyle where I'm traveling. I want a lifestyle where I routinely visit Alex and his family wherever he's at. I want a lifestyle where I visit my friends and family that are throughout the US. I have a lot of military friends that I want to go visit. And I'm glad I'm back in the US. I'm fixing up the RV, getting it to where it can do longer distances. And yeah, and I like the idea of being able to visit my friends. And that's what I hope to be doing 30 years from now. Where my home base is, though, if in 30 years I'm living in Thailand, then I'll be living in Thailand. If in 30 years I'm living wherever. But the idea of not living a nomadic life, definitely not me. I don't know how my siblings got to be so normal that they want a regular life. I don't understand it. Okay. Glow says, my son is not liking us living here in Puerto Vallarta. He prefers Mexico City, but I was done with bloody nose and gloom weather. I do hear that Mexico City has horrible pollution in the air. So I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. And he's going back to the US in the summer to live with his dad. And then Glow is going to be staying here. Yeah, it's not for everyone. It's not for our kids necessarily. So I don't think of myself as catering to my son. So he's 13, right? So I don't think of myself as catering to my son, but I do think of us as in a connected life, as in a ballet together. And so just as my happiness is important, and I've got 45 years of knowing how to make me okay, how to make me happy. Alex has 13 years of surviving the world his mother has created, if that makes sense. And he does know how to be happy as well. I don't want to suggest that he's miserable, but lucky for him, I am a nomad and I am okay with the idea of moving back to the US. He wanted to live in a house, which took me a minute, guys. I'm like, oh, you want to go back to the US and not live in the RV? Because my first thought when he said US, part of me was like, oh, RV life. Okay. It's expensive. So I'm going to need to, figure out the expenses part, but yeah, let's do it. Oh, I want to go to school. School is 5 days a week in the same physical location, months and months at a time. I had trouble with Alex going to school in Mexico, not because of the school, but because of A couple reasons. One, I should have moved closer to the school. I just never found a place near the school that I wanted to move to. But two, the regularity of having to take him to school, bring him back, like the amount of time in my day that it took up. Whereas homeschooling is very chill, or at least my style of homeschooling is very chill. So I was a little intimidated that Alex wanted to go back to school, but it is what it is. And again, I'm nomadic. I don't mind changing my life around a little bit. But luckily we found a homeschool group to kind of latch onto. So he just takes a few classes a few days a week. And turns out with your own vehicle, it's much easier. It's not the time drain that it was in Mexico, where we were living with taxis. Anyway, yeah, different people in your family want different things. And I think it's what I want Alex to learn from me is two basic concepts. One is not to be afraid of change, not to be afraid of travel, because people break down when their everyday life routine is killed. They break down. And I want Alex to be flexible enough to go, hey, I might prefer option A, but I can handle, and not just handle, but I can thrive in option B. I want him to not be afraid of change. But two, I want him to learn how to design the life of his dream. I want him to learn that, okay, the beauty of being flexible, the beauty of being able to go with the flow includes the ability to affect the flow. Okay, because if you're fighting the flow, if you're fighting change all the time, you're so busy fighting, you can't relax with it, but you also can't maneuver it. It becomes, just a horrible life. So that's what I want Alex to learn. No fear of the changing world that is inevitably around him. No fear of his personal life changes in a way that he didn't necessarily predict. And learning how to not just go with that flow, but to affect the flow so that he can design the life of his dreams. Because in my opinion, the life of my dreams is not contingent. I hope it's never contingent on a very specific location or a very specific lifestyle. Again, even moving to a place that I don't know the language, I think is fine. Alex might not be as fine with that, but luckily English is spoken in a lot of places. So yeah, I just want that flexibility. So we have to let our kids learn themselves and figure out what they like so that they can be happy, and I think if you're happy, then the things you produce, the things you create will kind of continue giving that happiness off into the world. When you're miserable, even if you're super smart and you're able to create lots of things, when you're miserable, I feel like your misery seeps into the things you create, and then the world around you gets affected by it. So we want to affect positive. Okay. Karen says, Mom on a Journey is Karen. I don't know if you know that, but so that's Karen. Yes, I have to go back to the US for a month. My nephew is riding around my RV with a motorcycle. I don't know if you can hear him. Anyway, he's leaving nothing. So Karen has to go back to the US for a month, and she's preparing. She was preparing as if she was going to war. I need to be strong enough to keep my healthy habits so I don't get sick again. Healthy habits. And I believe in her case, she feels a stronger pull from her family to join the family activities, which are maybe not as healthy for her. So yeah, it's a true thing. So knowing, right? Self-awareness is step one. It's like an AA meeting. Again, rehab and travel, they're so related. It's like an AA meeting where step one, hi, I'm an alcoholic. I need a life with less alcohol. Now what? What's step two? Go to step two. So knowing what you really need and how important it is, right, will help, I think, with maintaining the boundaries you need to maintain. Planning ahead, yes. The pollution in Mexico City was a real factor for him. This is Doug. It's pretty bad, but it's a glorious city. I know, so one, I have temporary residency in Mexico. I will be going back. Where will I go back? I can't imagine wanting to live, if I'm going to Mexico, I can't imagine wanting to live anywhere other than San Cruz. But Mexico is huge, and Mexico has so many beautiful and fascinating places, and Mexico City is one of those places. That being said, I would say the US equivalent would be like New York City. And as fabulous as I'm sure a visit to New York City is, I hate the idea of the crowds, mostly just the crowds. In my mind, it's hard, unless you're super wealthy, to be more isolated in New York City. So part of me is like, okay, Mexico City is like a 1 month vacation, a 1 month experience, vice moving to Mexico City, because there's a lot of people there, a lot of people in Mexico City. Anita says, at 64 years old, I just started as a nomad. I did travel a lot when I was younger. I was always a nomadic person, but others always wanted me to settle down. Yes. I think it's human nature to settle down, honestly. I think being nomadic we're the outlier for sure. So people they'll encourage us to settle down. And there's nothing wrong with settling down necessarily. And you're in Querétaro right now. Querétaro, so the number one reason I wanted to move to Querétaro, which I almost did before San Cris, is because La Cadencita was there. I don't know if you know her YouTube channel, but I've always loved, I love her YouTube channel because it's in English, so I can fully understand it, but she's Mexican. So, being able to understand how a local feels is always fascinating to me. So, and then again, because her channel is in English, I understand it better and she understands it better. Whereas when because I watch a lot of Mexico YouTubers that speak in Spanish, but I'm watching with subtitles, I'm watching with translation, and sometimes the translation is not good. So I don't always feel like I understand it, but because she's speaking it, I'm like, oh, I think she's able to portray her thoughts in English. So then I understand it. So I love it. Glow says, this is why he's moving back, because of school, and I'm not going back. I'm the happiest I've ever been living here. Yes. We create our own reality. We do. We figure out what we like and we encourage that more and more around us. Francie says, find your freedom in this new form, get your land legs, then take more small trips in the RV until it's time for the next big one. Yes, 100%. That is the plan. A travelholic in a stay here place. Yes. New York City. Oh, Francis says, New York City is awful. Trust me. I feel like I'm less fascinated with New York, I think, because it's also the US. And so Mexico City, which I think is probably similar, fascinates me more literally because it's not the US and it's a different country, travel. We like to travel. So Jared says, and I'm a travelholic. Yes. Hi, I'm Anne. Doug said, I think I said in a previous video of yours, I cannot pronounce that word, but say San Angel area in CDMX is a must. I think CDMX, and I'm trying to also be a little more open-minded about like New York City for the same reason. These are large cities. And so part of me does think if I stop saying Mexico City, if I stop saying New York City and instead focus on regions within, right? Because even people who are from New York City, they usually tell you where in New York City they're from because there's different regions, right? Same for Mexico City. So yeah, I do think some of the mental overwhelm, at least, will decrease if I focus on a community, a barrio, if you will, right? Smaller area. Because San Cris, for example, is much smaller, obviously. And I love the walkability of it. And what I don't remember sometimes is every city is walkable. Well, not every city, I'll say. You do have to have resources, but a lot of places are walkable if you live in a barrio environment. So instead of thinking Mexico City, gigantic, think region of Mexico City. So yes, focusing on the small areas. Doug is doing a week in New York City soon because his son lives there. You got to go where your family goes. And like I said, I see myself 20 years from now, 30 years from now, just incorporating visiting Alex wherever he might live on occasion. Like that's the lifestyle I envision. But where will I normally live? God only knows. I'll be wherever I'm at. But I do love having an RV because at least within the US, I can travel. The idea of RVing through Mexico has never appealed to me, by the way. Never. Even traveling through Canada in an RV has not appealed to me. Yeah. No, I think if I were to go to Canada, if I were to go to even Alaska, if I were to go to Mexico again, it'll be via flying in and then staying at a place. Francie says New York City is a great place to visit, especially with a local guide. But there's a cost to emotions, health, and wallet, for sure, for sure. Yes. And that being said, she's saying, Francie is saying, watch closely to Doug's son, because some people do thrive in that environment. Like I said, Alex and I we're so very different people. I don't think he's an extrovert, meaning I don't think he needs a highly extroverted life, but he needs more people around him than I do. I went to Wander, Mexico via bus. The bus service there's the buses, the ADO bus, and even the city buses, honestly, far, like in the US, I would be intimidated to take a bus for very long. Certain cities, maybe. Seattle, the city bus was okay. But just generally speaking, I don't think of buses as being amazing. However, in Mexico, they kind of are. They kind of are. I will say, however, I took the ADO bus from Merida back to San Cris. I think it was 17 hours. I could be wrong. Maybe it was only 11 hours. I don't know. It was many hours. Way too long. I would never do that again. Going from Merida to Cancun is 4 hours, and I think that is perfect. I did that trip multiple times, no issues, but yeah, 17 hours. I really think it's 17 hours. Way too long to be sitting. No matter how comfortable it is, it's way too long to be sitting. Oh, bye, Jared. Yes. Oh, I missed the back of his message. But it said, hit me up if you come through Idaho this summer. Idaho's on my list. It's on my list of places to go, actually. Yeah, 17 hours. It was way too much. It was way too much. And because there was a couple of confusing moments during the bus where I thought the bus was leaving without me. Even though I knew, my intellectual side knew, no, the bus needs to clean up and it needs to get some gas. So that's why we're, asked to leave the bus for a minute. But I forget what time of night it was, but middle of the night, I'm exhausted. And Alex suddenly is like, the bus is leaving. And I'm like, what? And I hauled. I was at the bus stop at the back of the ADO bus station, and I ran like I was still in the military to this bus. It was going really slow. Like, buses are not. And so the bus was just going from one part of the ADO parking area where the customers are to the back area, which I imagine is where like they get fuel, maybe they clean up, all that kind of stuff. So they weren't going fast. But I ran, banged on the wall. The driver is like, what are you doing, crazy lady? And I'm sign language. I'm like, hey, me and my kid need to get on this bus. And he's like, I'll be right back. I think he said something like, 10 more minutes or something. We didn't hear each other. He's like miming it. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, good. Okay, cool. So then I walk back. I'm just surprised that I didn't notice anyone recording me, because listen, YouTuber, I might not put it on YouTube, but I record a lot of things, even if it never goes anywhere. And I'm just surprised. Crazy lady running after the bus. I would have absolutely wanted to record. So to my knowledge, I did not get recorded. But if you see a video, I don't remember what I was wearing, but I was carrying my backpack with me and I ran. Alex tried to keep up with me, but he couldn't, so he stopped, which is fine. The intent was to stop the bus so we could get on the bus. But yeah, I ran after it like a crazy lady. Crazy lady. Yeah. Everyone's laughing, as you should. It was hilarious. Like, I recorded a quick reaction of myself afterwards, like out of breath, explaining that I'm an idiot. But that's the fun of travel. It's the fun of being in new places and seeing new things, because I've never traveled via bus that long. So intellectually, I knew what was happening, but the second Alex was like, it's leaving, I ran after it. Oh, bye, Doug. Thank you for coming. And I think I actually need to wrap up anyway, but this was so much fun. Yeah, don't freak out. That was my main point. Don't freak out when you see expats leaving the city that you're super excited to go to, the place that you want to live, you know, that you want to move to forever. It's unless they tell you something very specific that maybe you want to also take into consideration, there's a high chance. Travelers gotta travel. It's what we do. We go to a new place, we enjoy it, we learn what we learn, and then we move on to the next place. That's what the nomadic person does. It is not a negative reflection of Mexico or wherever the place is. It's just time to move, or personal reasons, right? Again, having friends and family in the US, a lot of people go back to the US, having people that have activities. If you've got kids and they're getting married, they're going to school, they're doing the things, you kind of want to be part of it. You know, and even though Mexico is pretty close, it's not as close as being in the state that your kid is in, right? Or that your dad is in, etc. So we go where we go always. Hold on, a couple of messages. But we miss you. I miss you too, Karen. You should come back to the US, to Georgia, for longer than a month. I don't know if I would actually truly recommend that, but you should get an RV. We should do RV life together. That's what we should do. Francis, that was fun. Thank you. I was so scared to do lives when I first thought of doing a live. I waited over a year to actually do a live in Mexico. So yeah, I'm enjoying this. I am planning, by the way, just as an FYI, I hate making promises, but it is what it is. My goal is every Wednesday to do a live video, unless my schedule gets crazy. I think Wednesdays will work. It will probably be the same time, although I am pondering making it an hour earlier. Let me know if that's something that interests you. If you are, you know, so today I did it at 10 o'clock Eastern time. I'm pondering 9 o'clock Eastern time. Let me know if that's too early, because a lot of people are from the West Coast, and I don't know if you guys want to wake up early or start watching a video early. But let me know if you're interested in a weekly. I'm doing a weekly. It's going to be every Wednesday for sure in the morning. I don't know exactly what time, probably for now, 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, with a regular video, a normal edited video happening ideally on Sundays. Although again, life sometimes does not allow me to actually post the day I want to post. But thank you guys for being here. It was fun, and I will see you guys in the next video.